It's time for Tyranitar, one of the few Dark-type Pokemon to make an impact in E-Card, in particular the Tyranitar from Expedition. 120 HP and an attack that can do 50 plus some. Already meets bare minimum for a competitive Stage 2 Pokemon in E-Card, but the reason that this thing is so imposing is because of its Dark Aura Pokebody. All energy attached to Tyranitar is Dark Energy instead of its usual type, and because it's a Pokebody, it can't be shut off with special conditions, and it makes that Stamp attack look way more feasible. So yes, Dark Aura actually makes that Stamp attack usable, because otherwise it would be next to impossible to get 4 Darkness Energies on there. But that's not why it's such a useful Pokebody. The reason it's so powerful is because it transforms any energy card into a Darkness Energy, basically. But if it's a special energy, you still get to keep all of the extra goodness. So if you're attaching a Cyclone Energy, well, that Cyclone Energy provides Darkness Energy now, and also gusts out your opponent's Pokemon. From that point, it's pretty easy to let your imagination run wild with all the special energy cards available in E-Card to see all of the tools that this Tyranitar has available to it. No matter what energy you're attaching, it's gonna be a Darkness Energy, and it's gonna help power up that Stamp attack, which is pretty tough to deal with once powered up. It's dealing a base damage of 50, you flip a coin, if heads it does 10 more damage, boosting it to 60, and then also 10 damage to each of your opponent's benched Pokemon. Even without the extra 10 damage that you could be getting from a special Darkness Energy, you're already gonna be 2-hitting most other Stage 2s in E-Card. If you're able to repeatedly hit heads on this coin flip and start stacking this spread damage around your opponent's bench, then you're pretty much setting up every other Pokemon they play for an OHKO. Of course, getting to that turn 4 can be a bit of a grind, so you do need a little bit of support. So let's talk about a support Pokemon that hasn't been featured on the channel so far, and that is Machamp. Expedition Machamp is a little bit harder to set up because it is a Stage 2, but I still rank it up there with your Clefables and Furret and Porygon 2 as just being a solid bench Pokemon, as well as an alternate attacker in some decks. Terraforming allows you to look at the top 4 cards of your deck and rearrange them however you like. So the idea is that on your turn, you're going to play whatever supporter you need to either draw or reliably search for specific cards. So on your turn, you've already played your Fan Club or you've already played your Professor Oak's Research to thin the deck. Then you're going to terraform the top 4 cards of your deck to make sure that next turn's top draw is as good as it can possibly be. As the game goes on and you thin your deck more and more, terraforming gets better and better. It's a solid way to keep yourself from dead drawing mid-game or late game when you really need specific cards to pull off a win, or at least turn the corner in a game. Using Machamp as an attacker with Iron Fist is pretty situational because that's its own 4 energy attack that isn't really going to be hitting anything for weakness. There's not a whole lot in the E-Card metagame that's weak to fighting, but it is great for mirror matches because Tyranitar is weak to fighting, which is another reason that they do make a decent pair. Tyranitar resists Psychic, which Machamp is weak to, and even if you're not attacking with Machamp, which you're rarely going to do since Iron Fist does cost 4 energy, but it does have 120 HP, so if anything, it can sponge up a couple of hits while you build up energy on a bench Tyranitar, while also terraforming on those turns. Those are the basics of the overall gameplay. Now, let's say we get into the deck list, start looking at some of the details of how this deck actually functions. Let's just keep the trend rolling. I know that there's another Larvitar with 40 HP, but guess what? We're using the one that's got 50 HP! Look at him just sitting there inside his mountain thinking about all the mountain that he just ate. It's able to get some chip damage off with the fighting energy early game if you really need to, but most of the time you're just going to be evolving this thing as quickly as possible up into Pupitar, which has some artwork that I absolutely love. It's zooming around the forest. People often forget that Pupitar basically propels itself around the Pokemon world using farts, so it's nice to see it depicted in the artwork here. Thrash is an attack that you are probably never going to use. If you really need to, you can. Most of the time, if you have 3 energy on a Pupitar, you want to go ahead and evolve it up into a Tyranitar. Even if you can't attack with Stamp yet, you still want that HP boost. The only time I can see you really justifying attacking with a Pupitar is if your opponent's just been hitting you with chip damage and energy removals, and you're just now able to lay down that third energy onto a Pupitar and you can potentially get a KO with it, sure, go for it. Because this deck is going to be utilizing special energy, it's good to have a 2/2 line of Furret in there. Furret's Scavenger Hunt ability is going to allow you to trade 2 cards in your hand for an energy card from your deck. Most of the time you're going to want to go for a special energy. This is going to help you get the specific special energy that you need, but it's also going to help thin your deck so that once Machamp starts terraforming, you're not going to get clogged up by those special energy cards because you've already grabbed them out of your deck. You will be able to get a Furret into play as early as turn 2, which is good for really getting that setup train rolling since your Machamp and your Tyranitar aren't going to be dropping until turn 3 minimum. So already having those special energy cards in hand is really going to help ensure that your Tyranitar is set up the way you want it to be set up, depending on what your matchup is, which by turn 2 or 3 you are going to know what your matchup is based on what your opponent has been playing. Not a whole lot of normal types or electric types being used in the E-card metagame, and so the usability of Machop, Machoke, and Machamp as attackers is pretty limited. Whenever you're running into normal Pokemon, they're almost always support Pokemon like a Porygon 2 or a Furret. You do have the option of attacking those, but you're almost never going to see them into the active position, and the ability to pull them into the active position is also limited. The supporter base will seem pretty familiar, starting with a full playset of Fan Club and a full playset of Professor Elm's training method. These are just ways of tearing through your deck on those first few turns as quickly as possible, getting all of the cards you need as quickly as possible. Tyranitar is a slow deck, even when compared to other big Stage 2 decks in the format, but the payoff is all the sweeter whenever you actually do get that setup and start firing off stamp attacks, big chunk of damage, spread damage, potentially reducing incoming damage. We'll get to that here in a bit, but before that we're going to be playing 3 copies of Professor Oak's Research, just a solid hand refresher. A lot of times it's gonna be the last card in your hand, so it's basically a draw 5. With Machamp taking care of the top 4 cards of your deck, Underground Expedition is gonna help you keep the bottom 4 cards of your deck in check, which can be useful information. Knowing what's on the bottom of your deck and what's on the top of your deck lets you know whether you should play a supporter that's gonna let you shuffle next turn if you're not happy with what's on the top and the bottom, or if you want to avoid shuffling so that you can keep those cards exactly where they are. A couple copies of Full Heal in here just because of Beedrill and Vileplume. Even though special conditions don't shut off Tyranitar's Pokebody, paralysis is going to make it so you can't attack. You know, building up 4 energy and then not being able to attack is very frustrating. And if you're not up against special conditions, well, those just become cards you can send back to your deck with Furret. A couple copies of Switch as well, just because Tyranitar's retreat cost is ridiculous. And sometimes it's better to just retreat a Tyranitar that's got like 100 damage on it to the bench, deprive your opponent of that prize just to send a fresh one into the active position. Full playset of Darkness Energy so you can get that bonus damage whenever you're attacking with a Tyranitar since it is a dark type, as well as a full playset of Metal Energy. When attached to Tyranitar, you're going to reduce incoming damage. It is going to reduce your damage output by 10 as well, but why not get that extra defense when Tyranitar's body is just going to transform that Metal Energy into a Darkness Energy, but you still get to reap the rewards. I'm going to be running 3 copies of Boost Energy, and I know what you're thinking. This is, you know, like you get a turn 2 Tyranitar stamp attack off, but that's not really feasible since you have to evolve into Pupitar first, so you're not really going to see a turn 2 stamp attack. This is more for when your active Tyranitar with 4 energy on it has been knocked out. You can move up a fresh T-Tar that only has 1 or 2 energy attached to it and actually get off a stamp attack a turn earlier than your opponent would have been anticipating. By attaching that boost energy, essentially attaching 3 Darkness Energy to Tyranitar and then getting off that stamp attack. The boost energy gets discarded, but next turn you can just lay down your other types of energy to power up another stamp attack, or just get another boost energy with Furret and do the same thing again while you're powering up another T-Tar on your bench. Finishing off the deck with 7 fighting energy. Again, those are in there for the Larvitar and the Machamp line. Though realistically, unless you're just heavily invested in a Machop from the get-go in a game, it's more likely you're going to be using those to attack with a Furret. Ideally, you are starting the game with a Larvitar in the active position, That's just what's going to make gameplay flow so much easier for this deck. Setting everything up per the usual for a Stage 2 deck. Getting that Furret, on your second turn and evolving on up. That way you can go ahead and get your energies in hand is pretty nice, while also smoothing out your draws with Machamp. I've already mentioned multiple times in this video that this deck is a bit slow. It runs even slower than most other Stage 2 decks in E-Card, but that's not where its strength is. You are going to get outsped early game. You may even lose one of your early T-Tars, and that's okay as long as you've not invested too much energy in it. The deck really blows up mid to late game when you get your initial stamp attack off. Hopefully you're able to do multiple and start spreading some damage off of the coin flip, setting up some of your opponent's benched Pokemon as easier future KOs, because by the time you're getting off a stamp, it's at least turn 4, and it's likely that your opponent's bench is full of support Pokemon and just backup attackers. Having a variety of special energy cards stacked on Tyranitar is also going to help. The special metal and the special darkness are kind of going to cancel out the damage boost you would be getting, because darkness increases by 10. Because Tyranitar is not steel, then the metal energy is going to reduce the attack by 10. So really, your net gain is just reducing incoming damage. Unless you want to just stack darkness energies on there, there's nothing wrong with dealing 70 damage and then hitting the heads on the coin flip and dealing 10 to everything else. That's pretty beastly for E-Card. Mid to late game is also when you're going to be moving your T-Tars that only have 1 or 2 energy into the active position. Whether it be following the knockout of your active T-Tar, or if you're just playing a switch, your opponent's not going to be expecting a stamp attack from a fresh T-Tar, and that is when you're going to drop the boost energy and have lots of fun. Despite being the slow start Tyranitar that it is, it still has some pretty even matchups with most of the metagame. Any deck that's dealing more than 60 damage in one turn is an issue, so there are some struggles against decks like Vileplume and Ninetales. Donphan is probably the hardest counter Tyranitar has, since Tyranitar is weak to fighting and Donphan is so easy to get set up. This is probably one of those other rare scenarios where you don't even want to evolve up into Tyranitar. It might just be better off to attack with Pupitar and try to play it out. Charizard is another hard matchup just because it can OHKO Tyranitar, something not a lot of cards in this format can do. The one ace you do have against Charizard is that Tyranitar can utilize boost energy, whereas Charizard can't. So you can get some attacks off very fast. If you just need an emergency stamp just to get some damage on a Charizard, go for it, man. The alternative Larvitar with 40 HP has some really nice artwork. I really enjoy it. And Mountain Eater is a pretty interesting attack to have for only 1 colorless. So it is an option if you want to go for a slightly different route and you're not worried about the loss of that 10 HP. Sure, go for this Larvitar. Maybe even do a 2 and 2 of. The 40 HP Larvitar lines up a lot more with Aquapolis Tyranitar that can also discard from the top of your opponent's deck, get a little meal action in there. And actually, if you don't want to wait 4 turns to attack, maybe do a half and half Tyranitar build where you have 2 of the Aquapolis ones, 2 of the Expedition ones, and just depending on what you start with, you kind of run with whatever Tyranitar is going to work best for you, because for 1 energy, Destructive Roar can be pretty good if you hit the coin flip. Tail Slap isn't great, but it does allow you to start attacking on turn 3 as soon as you evolve up into Tyranitar. You arguably get a lot more mileage out of boost energy when used for Giga Crush. The problem there being that you have to invest 2 of your special darkness energies into 1 single Tyranitar, which you may be doing with the Expedition Tyranitar anyway, but you always have the option not to, so that you can spread those special darkness energies around. With this one, you have to invest 2 on there, or use Rainbow Energy. So whether or not you mix and match your Tyranitars is completely up to you and what you want to do with the deck. I like them both. I had to fight the urge to include Aquapolis Tyranitar in this deck list, but I thought it detracted too much away from what the core purpose of the deck was. Let me know what you guys think. What do your Tyranitar combinations look like, if any? What do you think about this deck? What do you think about the metagame? What do you think about this video series so far? Let me know down below. Also, feel free to show the channel some love if you like what I'm doing. Leave a like, subscribe, share with others, you know, all the YouTube stuff that helps out the channel. I thank you for watching, and I'll see you next video. Oh yeah, social media links down in the description. Bye.